Well, here we are. Thoughts from the office. Rednecks Pride Outdoors. Hands free. Been getting a lot of calls here lately about baits and lures, and again, thank you for everybody that's buying. We're selling a lot of baits and lures, and I thank you for that. Please, thank you. But a question keeps coming up, mainly from the fur trapper. And they question about ADC baits and lures. And they shy off of ADC baits and lures. What they think, or whatever, that the bait and lure only works for cage traps and such, and roundhouses and what have you. So I want to just do a real quick, I know it's odd, but I'm going to try to do a real quick video just to talk about fur line and ADC, or wildlife control baits and lures. Now, just to give a little history, I started making our line of bait and lure back in 1987. Let me rephrase that. I came out with my first successful baits and lures in 1987. I had been trying to make baits and lures probably 84, 83 maybe. Trying to figure out how to make products. And I did, in fact, start off trying to make baits and lures for the ADC wildlife control field. And the reason was simple. The trap line baits and lures that I had used as a fur trapper, and let me just say this real quick, because the controversy is going to start. I started trapping at around the age of 10. That was like 1968. Okay. I got into wildlife control in 1979. So, yes, I am a wildlife control specialist. Yes, I make a lot of money by living in wildlife control, but I am a fur trapper first. Okay, fur trapping is what got me into ADC wildlife control. So we'll just set that straight right there. Okay, and when I retire from ADC wildlife control, which I will turn into, I used to do ADC wildlife control, but I will still be a trapper until the day they put me in the ground, a fur trapper. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. Fur trappers constantly say to me, there's a difference. You can't use an ADC bait and lure for fur trapping, and that is just a fallacy. Okay. Basically, your ADC wildlife control baits are going to be made with taste and smell. Okay? They're made to smell good, pull the animal to the set, and then entice the animal to continue on with the set to get caught. It is true that ADC falls between residential, commercial, and back 40. So in other words, ADC, animal damage control, is going to be more fur trapping or more trapping in the back 40 or out in the pastures or whatever, doing predator control or crop damage or what have you. Wildlife control falls into ADC. ADC falls into that wildlife control. And wildlife control is essentially going to be, yes, more towards residential, commercial, human conflicts with wildlife. Where ADC, if your state allows, my state doesn't allow it, but ADC, you're going to use foot traps, you're going to use dog-proof traps, you're going to use cage traps, you're going to use cable restraints, you're going to use snares, you're going to use conibears. With wildlife control, you're predominantly going to use dog-proofs, cage traps. Okay? Snares for, like for me, groundhogs, we use cable restraints for groundhogs a lot. All right? So the biggest thing is the difference between fur trapping and wildlife control is essentially this. As a fur trapper, you've got to have your location down pat. You've got to understand how to find location in the back 40, in the pastures, in the woods, in the rivers and creeks and streams. You've got to be able to figure out how to find that location. ADC, you've got to be able to find that location. And you've also got to be able to understand social problems. Okay, I may be on that corporate land where there's a lot of people walking and looking at nature. Dogs, cats, that type of stuff. Wildlife control, I'm going to be in a social element. All right, I've got to understand totally what is going on around me, not only from my customer, but from the neighbors and what have you. Okay, but when it comes to methods, baits, and lures, well, they're all the same, people. They're all the same. Now, with that being said, trap line, baits, and lures are going to be different than wildlife control baits and lures. The reason that is trap line, baits, and lures are made for smell and attracting the animal to the set. But they're also made, and if you talk to any fur trapping lure manufacturing, the first thing we're going to tell you is this. A trap line, bait, and lure is made to get their attention by smell, build their curiosity for the most part, bring them to the set, but you are to catch the animal before they get to the bait or lure. Why? Because most trapline baits and lures are not going to have a taste factor. Okay? When you look at trapline baits and lures, the good ones, Carmen's, Blackie's Blend, Jameson's, Stoltz. I mean, there's just Schneider's, Kansas think Ed's is Kansas line. Just to keep on going. There's all those boys. You go to a convention, there's more of us lure makers there than you can shake a stick at. But essentially, our trap line baits and lures, especially used with foot traps, are going to be made to bring the animal to the set, create a curiosity to where he wants to work the set, and before it gets the bait or lure, gets caught. Okay. ADC baits and lures. When I first came out with mine in 1987, and I don't know if there was anybody out there already manufacturing taste baits and lures for the ADC. There wasn't any that I could find at that point. That's why I set out in 83, 84 to start making my own. And it took me 3 years to come out with my first 2 baits, Got Her Done and Nomos, that worked, that held, that stayed the same for years. Okay, it was made for taste and smell. Now, the biggest fallacy out there is if it says ADC on there, it's not going to work in the fur line. Let me tell you what, a taste bait and lure has its place. A smell bait and lure, trapline bait and lure, may not have its place in a cage trap or a DP. Why? Because sometimes the animal gets to the bait or lure before you catch him in a cage trap or a DP. And if it doesn't have a good taste factor, it doesn't continue to work the set. So by adding the taste factor, if he does get to the bait or lure prior to setting off the DP or prior to setting off the cage trap, then if it tastes good, he's going to go back for it. All right. So your trapline baits and lures typically, not all the time, but typically do not have a taste factor. They have a great smell factor. They have a great attraction factor, but their taste factor is not really that great. ADC wildlife control baits and lures, good ones, commercial, will have smell, attraction value, taste, which leads to holding power. So you see, an ADC wildlife control bait and lure works very good out in the trap line, where a trap line bait and lure may not work as good in a wildlife control situation where you're using cage traps or DP traps. You know, a lot of folks really do not understand the beginning of lure making. And the trapline bait and lure manufacturers, when you look at what we do in trapline bait and lure, for the majority of those formulas, we're taking a product, a base, a food source, a something, for example, glands, and we're breaking it down to a place to where it stabilizes and stays. Sometimes in today's modern times, we use preservatives or stuff like that to stop that aging process where we want it to be. But when you look at way back when, the early days, the mountain men, then as we got into the early 19th century, or early 20th century, 1900s, the Hallmakers, the Arnolds, Rickards, those old boys, okay, they was breaking their products down all the way. So you take a gland, fox glands, and you rot that baby all the way down to where it don't rot no boat. Same thing with fish. I have my long call fish bait. I take that down to a point that is preserved, but it's still pretty rough. And they'll still eat that godforsaken stuff. My fish bait and my little smoked fish bait is preserved fresh. Stopped fresh, but then it's still got to age to where it stops changing. Okay? And then I have another fish lure product. That baby's rotted all the way down, man. I mean, it's just taken all the way down to it. They ain't going no more. That can take 6 months to a year, depending on how you do it. Okay? So I know it wasn't going to be a short one, but it turned into a long one. I know it was going to be a short one, but it's turned into a long one. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. There is, trapline bait and lure is not better on the fur line than ADC bait and lure. If you know what you're doing to do with it, and you know the results you're looking for, and you're trying to figure out how to get her done. So in other words, if you're using a bait and lure that has a taste factor, ADC, you're going to use it a little bit differently than you will if you're going to use a trapline bait and lure that's main attraction is smell. In other words, ADC wildlife control, just catch them. Trapline bait and lure, most of the time you want to catch them before they get to the bait and lure. On the same token, flip-flop, trapline bait and lure will work great in a cage trap or a DP if you know what you're doing with them. And your intent is to catch before they get to the bait and lure. So in other words, if you're going to use a trapline bait and lure in a cage trap, you're going to use the type of cage trap that's going to catch him quicker than a cage trap that they've got to maybe push the pan down on. And I go over that in my cage trapping talks and instructions. Everybody says just take a cage trap, throw a piece of bait in it and set it without. No. Yeah, if you want to catch a couple critters, but if you want to catch them all, there's a strategy. Every bit as much as a foot trap. But that's a talk for another day. So yes, you can use trapline bait and lure in a cage trapping situation, but your cage trap presentation and position has got to be good. The same thing with fur trapping and ADC wildlife control. So I've taken a long time to tell you the same old thing. Listen, Listen. Take a bait, figure out how it works, where it works, and why it works, and make it work. Understand that most ADC wildlife control baits are going to be made with smell, attraction, taste. 3. Trapline baits and lures are going to be made smell and attraction. All right. So don't get all pissy at me saying thinking I'm trying to say that one's better than the other. They're not. But if you don't know how to use them, they are. Okay? And typical fashion, redneck style, I'm going to leave it here. Rednecks Pride Outdoors. I'll catch you next time.